Beneath the cobblestone streets and towering monuments of Rome, hidden from the eyes of millions who walk above, lies a forgotten world, a labyrinth of tunnels, aqueducts, and supply routes that once pulsed like veins beneath the skin of an empire. Picture this: while gladiators fought in the Colosseum and senators debated in the Forum, an invisible network of logistics hummed tirelessly, delivering water, food, and goods to every corner of the city. This wasn't just infrastructure, it was the lifeblood of Rome, the silent engine that powered its dominance for centuries. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on these ancient marvels, uncovering the real networks beneath Rome that made the Eternal City possible. Think about the scale of it all: a metropolis of over 1 million people at its peak, fed by grain shipped from Egypt, watered by aqueducts stretching dozens of miles, and supplied through tunnels that snaked beneath palaces and slums alike. How did they do it? Without modern machinery, without GPS or trucks, Rome's engineers and planners orchestrated a system so efficient it rivals even our modern cities. The aqueducts alone were feats of precision, carrying millions of gallons of fresh water daily, while underground corridors allowed goods to move unseen, avoiding the chaos of the streets above. These weren't just practical solutions, they were strokes of genius designed to keep Rome's heart beating no matter the cost. What's even more astonishing is how much of this hidden world remains undiscovered. Archaeologists are still uncovering new passages, new clues to how Rome functioned at its height. Every tunnel, every cistern, every groove worn into stone by centuries of carts tells a story of ambition, innovation, and sheer will. This video is your ticket into that world. We'll walk the paths of ancient engineers, trace the routes of long-vanished supply chains, and reveal how Rome's hidden logistics didn't just sustain an empire, they defined it. So come with us, step beneath the surface, and see the Eternal City as you've never seen it before. The real Rome isn't just in its ruins above ground. It's in the secrets buried below. Rome's underground networks didn't appear overnight, they were born from necessity. As the city swelled from a modest settlement along the Tiber to the capital of an empire spanning 3 continents, its leaders faced a crisis: how to move mountains of grain, rivers of water, and endless supplies through narrow streets crammed with people. The solution was to go underground. Imagine the moment some Roman engineer first sketched out the idea: tunnels beneath the streets where carts could roll unimpeded, where water could flow cleanly without mixing with sewage, where goods could travel from ship to storeroom without clogging the city above. This was urban planning on a scale the world had never seen. What made these systems revolutionary wasn't just their existence, but their adaptability. The earliest tunnels were simple clay pipes for water, rough-hewn passages for storage. But as Rome's wealth grew, so did its ambitions. By the 1st century, engineers were constructing multi-level subterranean highways with separate channels for fresh water and wastewater. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's legendary sewer system, started as a humble drainage ditch in the 6th century before the Common Era. Over centuries, it expanded into a vaulted underground river wide enough for a boat to navigate, a monument to Rome's relentless drive to improve and expand. The real genius lay in how these systems intertwined. Aqueducts didn't just end at fountains, they fed into underground distribution tanks that used gravity to send water uphill through lead pipes. Warehouses near the Tiber connected to tunnels that ran beneath entire neighborhoods, allowing olive oil from Spain and wine from Gaul to flow directly into the heart of the city. This wasn't just infrastructure, it was a living, breathing ecosystem designed to sustain 1 million people in an era when most cities housed barely 10,000. Perhaps most remarkably, these networks became a form of soft power. When Roman engineers built aqueducts in conquered territories, they weren't just bringing water, they were demonstrating the empire's technological might. A governor could point to the crystal-clear water flowing from a mountain spring into a public fountain and say, "This is what Rome gives you." The underground became a silent ambassador, proving that joining the empire meant joining a civilization that could perform miracles. Yet for all their sophistication, these systems had one fatal flaw. They required constant maintenance. When the empire began to crumble, the networks decayed with it. Tunnels collapsed, aqueducts cracked, and over centuries, much of this engineering marvel was forgotten. That's why every new discovery, like the recently uncovered bakery tunnels near the Circus Maximus, where donkeys walked endless circles to grind grain, feels like finding a lost chapter of history. These ruins remind us that Rome's true monument wasn't just the Colosseum or the Pantheon. It was the invisible machine beneath the streets, the one that made everything else possible. The aqueducts of Rome weren't just monuments of stone. They were mathematical masterpieces disguised as architecture. Picture an engineer standing on a hillside outside the city 2,000 years ago, leveling his sighting instrument toward the distant horizon. He wasn't just building a water channel, he was solving an equation with gravity as his only power source. The secret wasn't in the towering arches we admire today, those were just bridges to span valleys. The real magic happened underground, where the aqueducts ran for miles at a slope so precise it could drop just 1 foot every 300 feet of distance. That's a gradient of less than 1 degree achieved without lasers, without satellites, using nothing but bronze levels and human ingenuity. Water didn't simply rush from the mountains to Rome in an uncontrolled torrent. Engineers designed the system like a living organism, with sedimentation tanks where water slowed just enough for impurities to settle, and distribution chambers that acted like underground traffic circles. At the Piscina Mirabilis near Naples, a cavernous reservoir large enough to hold over 5 million gallons water would pause, breathe, then branch into lead pipes heading toward different neighborhoods. These weren't just pipes, they were pressure regulators with narrower diameters slowing flow to uphill districts while wider channels fed downhill areas. The entire city became a hydraulic instrument, each fountain and bathhouse playing its part in the symphony. What's astonishing is how these systems adapted to Rome's growth. When demand increased, engineers didn't just build new aqueducts, they retrofitted existing ones with inverted siphons, using the principles of physics to push water across valleys without losing elevation. The Aqua Marcia, completed in 140 before the Common Era, incorporated a siphon nearly 2 miles long, a staggering feat of engineering that would remain unmatched until the Industrial Revolution. And all this maintenance happened invisibly, through access shafts disguised as ordinary street fountains where workers could descend to clear blockages or make repairs. The aqueducts also became Rome's silent diplomats. In frontier towns from Carthage to Cologne, the arrival of Roman engineers meant more than just fresh water. It meant orchards where none could grow before, public baths that became social hubs, and fountains that transformed dusty plazas into oases. When the Aqua Augusta brought water to Naples' bay towns, it didn't just supply homes, it powered a booming fish sauce industry by enabling saltwater fermentation tanks. This was logistics as empire building, with every drop of water carrying an unspoken message. Rome could bend nature itself to its will, yet for all their brilliance, the aqueducts harbored a paradox. Those same lead pipes that delivered water so efficiently may have slowly poisoned the elite who could afford private connections. Recent studies of sediment in ancient pipes show staggering lead concentrations, perhaps explaining erratic behavior in emperors like Caligula or Nero. Even Rome's greatest engineering triumph carried unintended consequences, a reminder that no system, however perfect, exists without trade-offs. Today, walking along the park of the Aqueducts in Rome, you can still see these giants striding across the landscape. But look closer where the brickwork meets the ground. Notice the small openings barely wide enough for a child to crawl through. These were the inspection tunnels, the hidden arteries where generations of workers kept the water flowing. That's the true lesson of Rome's aqueducts. Their endurance came not just from stone and mortar, but from the unseen hands that maintained them day after day, century after century. When we admire their arches, we're really seeing a monument to countless unnamed engineers and laborers, the real keepers of Rome's lifeblood. Deep beneath Rome's grand temples and marble-paved forums, where sunlight never reached, flowed a river of a different kind, the Cloaca Maxima, a sewer so advanced it would put many modern cities to shame. What began in the 6th century before the Common Era as an open-air ditch to drain marshy land between Rome's hills transformed over centuries into an arched subterranean highway, wide enough for a boat to navigate. This wasn't just about waste disposal, it was a bold reimagining of what a city could be. By channeling floodwaters and sewage away from streets, the Cloaca Maxima didn't just clean Rome. It literally reshaped the ground beneath its feet, turning disease-ridden swamps into prime real estate for forums, markets, and temples. The brilliance of the system lay in its simplicity and foresight. Unlike earlier civilizations that built around natural waterways, Roman engineers reversed the logic. They created their own underground river and bent it to their will. The original channel, lined with volcanic stone from nearby quarries, followed a carefully calculated slope, using gravity to keep water moving even during dry seasons. As Rome grew, so did the sewer's reach, with branch lines funneling waste from public latrines, bathhouses, and even elite villas into the main artery. By the height of the empire, the Cloaca Maxima had become a mirror image of the city above, a shadowy reflection of Rome's neighborhoods, flowing inexorably toward the Tiber. But the sewer's impact went far beyond sanitation. Its construction allowed Rome to conquer geography itself. Before its existence, the Forum Romanum, the heart of political and social life, was a flood-prone valley between the Palatine and Capitoline hills. The Cloaca Maxima drained this space, creating stable ground where senators could debate and merchants could trade. Later, when emperors like Augustus expanded the city into the Campus Martius, a low-lying plain along the Tiber, they did so with confidence, knowing the sewer network could handle the runoff. This engineering marvel effectively doubled Rome's habitable area, proving that infrastructure could be as powerful as armies in shaping an empire. The system also held surprising social significance. While most ancient cultures treated waste removal as a shameful necessity, Romans celebrated the Cloaca Maxima as a civic triumph. They even deified it. The goddess Clocina presided over the sewer, blending practical reverence with spiritual symbolism. Visiting dignitaries from Greece or Egypt would gape at public fountains fed by aqueducts, but what truly astonished them were the underground tours. Wealthy citizens could arrange to float through sections of the Cloaca Maxima by torchlight, marveling at the precision-cut stonework that had endured for centuries. In a world where most cities stank of rotting waste, Rome's comparative cleanliness became a point of pride, a tangible demonstration of its cultural superiority. Yet maintaining this underground labyrinth required an army of unsung heroes. Teams of laborers known as cloacarii worked in shifts, wading through waist-high water to clear blockages with hooks and baskets. Some sections had service tunnels barely 3 feet high, forcing workers to crawl for miles in near darkness. The poet Juvenal sarcastically remarked that surviving a journey through the Cloaca Maxima was proof of divine favor. But without these workers' backbreaking labor, Rome's gleaming surface would have collapsed into filth within weeks. Today, fragments of the Cloaca Maxima still function beneath modern Rome. Near the Ponte Rotto, massive original stone arches now embedded in newer brickwork still channel water toward the Tiber. Walking past these remnants, it's easy to overlook their significance, but every time a summer storm drenches the city, the ancient sewer silently does its job, just as it has for 2.5 millennia. That's the ultimate testament to Roman engineering. Structures so well built they outlasted empires, languages, even the very civilization that created them. Cloaca Maxima wasn't just a sewer, it was Rome's first underground monument to the future. Feeding over 1 million mouths in ancient Rome wasn't just about importing grain, it was a high-stakes logistical ballet performed in the shadows. Every year, fleets of ships braved Mediterranean storms to deliver enough Egyptian grain to fill modern cargo trains stretching miles long. But here's where Rome's genius kicked in. Instead of dumping this mountain of grain in open warehouses vulnerable to rats and rot, engineers built a hidden world of storage. Beneath the Aventine Hill and along the Tiber's banks, vast underground granaries called horia honeycombed the earth. These weren't simple pits, they were climate-controlled marvels. Raised floors allowed air to circulate, while thick walls of volcanic tufa stone maintained cool, dry conditions perfect for preserving wheat. One such warehouse near Testaxio Hill could hold over 50,000 tons of grain, enough to feed the city for months. The system's real sophistication lay in its distribution. Grain didn't just sit in storage, it flowed through Rome like blood through veins. State-sponsored bakeries, often tucked into basements to conserve space, transformed raw grain into bread at industrial scales. Archaeologists have uncovered bakeries with multiple millstones powered by donkeys walking endless circles, their hooves wearing grooves into stone floors. But the most surprising detail, many bakeries connected directly to underground tunnels. These weren't just shortcuts, they were supply lines ensuring bread could reach markets without clogging the streets above. Imagine a network where donkeys hauled grain underground by torchlight, emerging only at delivery points near the Circus Maximus or the Forum. Rome's food security also relied on psychological strategy. The Annona system, a state-run grain dole, wasn't just about charity. By distributing free or subsidized grain to citizens, emperors turned full stomachs into political loyalty. Storage depots doubled as propaganda tools. The Porticus Minutia, where grain tickets were issued, boasted marble columns and frescoes depicting imperial generosity. When drought struck Egypt or pirates disrupted shipments, emperors scrambled to find alternate sources, knowing empty granaries meant riots. The lesson was clear: control the grain and you control Rome. Yet the system had vulnerabilities. The very tunnels that made distribution efficient also became targets during crises. During the Year of the Four Emperors, rival factions fought not just in streets but underground, sabotaging granaries to starve opponent supporters. And those ingenious horia, their success depended on meticulous record-keeping. Wax tablets found at Ostia reveal a bureaucratic miracle. Every sack of grain was tracked from ship to silo, with inspectors noting moisture levels and quality. One slip-up in this paper trail could mean spoiled reserves or deadly shortages. Today, the best evidence of this system hides in plain sight. Monte Testaxio, a 100-foot tall hill near the Tiber, is actually an ancient landfill made of broken olive oil amphoria, over 50 million shards. Each shard represents a container that fed Rome's insatiable demand, shipped from Spain and North Africa. Nearby, the ruins of the Horia Galbi still show ventilation slots designed by engineers 2,000 years ago. These silent ruins tell a truth modern cities still grapple with. Feeding millions isn't just about food. It's about foresight, infrastructure, and above all, the invisible networks that keep civilization running. While Rome's aqueducts and sewers served the masses, another underground network existed solely for the elite, the Cryptoporticus. These weren't mere passageways but shadowy arteries of power, winding beneath palaces and forums like silent accomplices to history's most consequential decisions. Picture a senator slipping away from a crowded reception through an unremarkable door, descending into a vaulted corridor lit by flickering oil lamps. Within minutes, he could traverse from the Senate House to the Imperial Palace without ever breathing the same air as the common citizens above. The engineering of these corridors reveals their true purpose. Unlike utilitarian tunnels, cryptoportici boasted decorative frescoes, mosaic floors, and even climate control. Some circulated cool air from underground channels to combat Rome's summer heat. The best-preserved example lies beneath Nero's Domus Aurea, where a 2,000-foot-long Cryptoporticus curves gently to avoid detection from the surface. Its walls still bear grooves where heavy curtains could be drawn, ensuring private conversations stayed private. This wasn't just architecture, it was theater designed for secrecy. Political dramas unfolded in these twilight spaces. When conspirators plotted against Emperor Caligula, they used a Cryptoporticus beneath the Palatine Hill to coordinate their movements. Centuries later, Emperor Domitian allegedly had one built with acoustic tricks. Certain niches amplified whispers while dampening louder speech, creating perfect spots for overhearing unsuspecting visitors. Some passageways even featured false walls leading to escape routes, like the one Emperor Hadrian used during a near riot at the Pantheon. But the most intriguing Cryptoportici served dual purposes. Beneath the Temple of Claudius, archaeologists found a corridor that connected to a hidden chamber containing strange artifacts, a set of scales, blank wax tablets, and an oddly placed chair. This was likely a clandestine meeting room where sensitive negotiations occurred away from prying eyes. Similar chambers under the Forum housed archives too delicate for public record, including treaty drafts and intelligence reports on foreign leaders. What makes these structures remarkable isn't just their existence, but how they mirror Rome's political culture. The same empire that built vast public baths where citizens mingled freely also created labyrinths where power brokers could vanish like ghosts. While aqueducts symbolized Rome's generosity, Cryptoportici represented its ruthlessness, a reminder that true power often operates where sunlight doesn't reach. Today, walking these passages feels like stepping into history's backstage, where the real scripts were written before the actors took their places in the light above. Rome's famous above-ground roads, like the Appian Way, get all the glory, but the real unsung heroes of urban logistics were the tunnels snaking beneath them. Imagine a merchant in the Subura district loading amphorae of prized olive oil onto a cart, not for the crowded streets above, but for a dimly lit passageway descending into the earth. These weren't just shortcuts, they were a parallel city designed for efficiency. While the surface bustled with pedestrians and animals, underground corridors, some wide enough for two carts to pass, allowed vital goods to move unseen, shielded from thieves, weather, and the chaos of Rome's notorious traffic jams. The scale of this network was staggering. Near the Tiber's docks, archaeologists have uncovered ramps leading to subterranean freight routes that connected directly to warehouses. One tunnel beneath the Aventine Hill still bears deep ruts from centuries of carts carrying grain to the state granaries. But the most surprising finds are the way stations, small chambers off main tunnels where drivers could rest or repair axles, their walls blackened by the soot of ancient oil lamps. This wasn't haphazard digging. It was a meticulously planned freight system, complete with ventilation shafts disguised as street-side shrines to avoid suspicion. Military supplies moved through these tunnels too. During the siege of Jerusalem, historian Josephus noted how Rome's legions relied on hidden veins to transport siege engines piece by piece beneath hostile territory. Back home, the same principle applied. Weapons from the Imperial armories could be shifted discreetly to barracks near the city walls, avoiding public panic during crises. Even the Emperor's personal guard used a private tunnel linking the Palatine Palace to the Castra Praetoria, a 3,000-foot passage that became a lifeline during coups or riots. What made these roads truly revolutionary was their adaptability. When Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii's ports in volcanic ash, Rome's underground network rerouted Campanian wine shipments through alternative tunnels within days. Merchants paid tolls to the city for access, with fees calculated by the depth of the tunnel and the weight of goods, an ancient version of modern congestion pricing. The system even had its own rush hour. Inscriptions reveal that nighttime transport was taxed higher to discourage noise disturbing residents above. Yet these tunnels held darker secrets too. During the Great Fire of Rome, Nero allegedly used them to salvage treasures while the city burned above. Later, Christian persecutors hunted believers through the labyrinth, forcing the faithful to mark hidden symbols on walls to guide escapes. The very corridors built for commerce became conduits of survival and sometimes betrayal. Today, fragments of this network survive beneath modern Rome. Near the Bocca della Verità, a section of the Cryptoporticus still shows grooves where carts once rolled, their loads destined for markets long vanished. Walking these passages, you can almost hear the echoes of creaking wheels and muffled voices, a reminder that Rome's greatness wasn't just built on marble and monuments, but on the ingenuity of moving things unseen. The glittering fountains and smoothly running baths of Rome masked a grim reality. Every drop of clean water, every functioning sewer line, every stocked granary relied on an army of enslaved laborers working in conditions we can barely fathom. While senators strolled through sunlit porticos discussing philosophy, teams of men, women, and even children toiled underground in perpetual twilight, their backs bent under the weight of maintaining an empire's infrastructure. The Cloaca Maxima's vaulted arches may awe us today, but few pause to consider who dredged its channels knee-deep in waste, or who scaled aqueducts in howling winds to clear blockages with nothing but iron hooks and fraying ropes. Records from Austria's slave market reveal the cold calculus behind these operations. Strong young men commanded premium prices if they had experience in opus subterraneum, underground work. Purchasers looked for specific traits: resistance to dampness, ability to work in confined spaces, even a tolerance for the sulfurous gases that pooled in low tunnels. One surviving bill of sale from Pompeii lists a 20-year-old named Onesimus, sold for double the normal price because he could breathe like a fish in the airless passages beneath bathhouses. These weren't just workers, they were human machinery, valued and discarded like tools. The aqueduct maintenance crews faced particularly brutal conditions. Pliny the Elder describes teams of enslaved divers sent into freezing settling tanks with chisels to chip away mineral deposits, a job that often ended in drowning or lung collapse from the pressurized depths. Inscriptions near the Aqua Claudia tell another story. Crude carvings left by workers showing stick figures falling from great heights, a silent protest against repairing aqueducts without safety ropes. Yet without these teams working year-round, Rome's water would have stopped flowing within weeks. Mineral buildup could reduce an aqueduct's capacity by half in just 2 years, meaning constant cleaning wasn't optional. It was the difference between a functioning city and collapse. Sewer workers endured even worse. The poet Martial jokes about the Cloaca gladiators who entered the tunnels as clean men and emerged unrecognizable beneath layers of waste. But this was deadly serious work. Collapses were frequent, with diggers suffocating under sudden mudslides or being overcome by toxic gases. During the reign of Trajan, an entire team of 30 perished in the Cloaca Maxima when a pocket of bad air, likely methane, ignited their lamps. Their bodies were never recovered. The tunnel was simply sealed and rerouted. Yet some enslaved workers turned this underworld into a space of covert resistance. Archaeologists have found tiny niches in tunnel walls containing makeshift shrines to gods like Silvanus, protector of boundaries, a quiet reclaiming of forbidden spiritual practices. Near the Circus Maximus, a series of marks on bricks form what scholars believe was a rudimentary counting system, possibly tracking work hours or tallying abuses. Most poignant are the footprints preserved in the mortar of a granary tunnel, small, child-sized prints deliberately pressed deep, as if saying, "I was here." The bitter irony: these invisible workers knew Rome's underbelly better than any senator or emperor. While elites relied on scribes for maps, enslaved maintainers carried mental blueprints of every twist and turn, every weak joint in an aqueduct, every sewer junction perfect for hiding contraband. During the slave revolt led by Spartacus, it was said his lieutenants included a former aqueduct worker who used his knowledge of tunnels to ambush Roman forces. The empire's greatest strength, its hidden networks, could become its vulnerability in the hands of those who built them. Today, as we admire Roman engineering marvels, the smoothed grooves where ropes pulled carts, the worn steps descending into darkness, we're not just looking at stone. We're seeing the echoes of countless unnamed lives that literally upheld an empire. Their absence from most histories speaks volumes, but the tunnels themselves remember. Rome's legions didn't just march across the ancient world, they moved beneath it. While the empire's famous roads carried troops between provinces, an unseen web of tunnels and chambers allowed armies to operate with ghostly efficiency right under their enemies' feet. Picture a besieged city's defenders patrolling their walls at dawn, unaware that beneath them, Roman sappers were quietly hollowing out galleries, packing them with flammable brush, and preparing to collapse entire sections of the fortifications in a single fiery blast. This was the hidden face of Roman warfare, where logistics and strategy met in the darkness. The scale of these military networks was staggering. Beneath frontier forts like Dura Europos on the Euphrates, archaeologists have uncovered multi-level armories carved into bedrock, their walls still scarred by the scrape of sword racks being dragged across stone. Near Hadrian's Wall, a tunnel system connected watchtowers to hidden supply caches, allowing garrisons to resupply during harsh winters without exposing themselves to enemy archers. But the most sophisticated systems lay beneath Rome itself. The Castra Praetoria, home to the emperor's elite guard, linked to a labyrinth of passages that could funnel troops to the Palatine Hill, the Forum, or the Tiber docks in minutes. These weren't just tunnels, they were strategic levers, allowing emperors to project force anywhere in the city without stirring panic in the streets above. Siege warfare revealed the system's true brilliance. During the assault on Masada, Roman engineers didn't just build ramparts, they constructed an entire underground road to haul siege towers into position, shielding them from defenders' view until the final moment. In Gaul, Julius Caesar's men dug camouflaged tunnels to drain enemy water supplies, then used those same passages to infiltrate Oppida under cover of night. The techniques became so refined that specialized units, the Milites Fossarii, emerged as the ancient equivalent of combat engineers, trained to dig, shore up tunnels, and calculate exactly where to place charges to collapse enemy walls. What made these networks terrifyingly effective wasn't just their existence, but their adaptability. When rebels in Judea turned Jerusalem's sewers into guerrilla strongholds, Rome countered by mapping every underground access point, then flooding key sections to flush out resistance. During civil wars, rival factions used the same tunnels for ambushes, only to find their opponents had secretly redirected passages or booby-trapped junctions. The underground became a three-dimensional chessboard where victory went to those who best understood the shadows. Yet these systems had a fatal flaw: they depended on absolute secrecy. Traces of elaborate countermeasures survive: false tunnels leading to dead ends, chambers with floors designed to collapse under unauthorized weight, even directional markers visible only in specific torchlight. The most revealing find, a set of lead tablets near the Colosseum listing tunnel, routes in cryptic short and likely an officer's crib notes, destroyed after reading to prevent leaks. Rome's military might ultimately rested not just on swords and discipline, but on controlling what happened where no one could see. Today, standing in the excavated tunnels of Hadrian's Wall or peering into the siege works at Masada, you're not just looking at ancient engineering. You're witnessing the birth of modern warfare's most enduring principle. The side that masters logistics in darkness controls the battle in the light. Beneath the bustling wharves of Rome's Tiber River, where merchants haggled over imported spices and fishermen unloaded their catches, a hidden industrial revolution was turning water into bread. The Janiculum Hills slopes concealed one of antiquity's most ingenious solutions to urban overcrowding, a multi-story complex of underground water mills, their wooden wheels churning relentlessly in the darkness. Unlike the picturesque windmills we imagine from later centuries, these subterranean factories were marvels of adaptive engineering, squeezing maximum productivity from every inch of Rome's cramped landscape. The system worked with elegant simplicity. Engineers diverted the Tiber's current through sluice gates into brick-lined channels that plunged underground, accelerating the water's speed before it hit the mill wheels. Each millstone unit occupied its own vaulted chamber, stacked vertically like apartments. Some complexes housed over a dozen mills in a single shaft. The grinding never stopped. While one team of enslaved workers fed grain into hoppers above, others bagged flour below, their faces masked against the perpetual cloud of fine dust. This was industrial-scale food production centuries before the term existed, all hidden from view to prevent sabotage during grain shortages or riots. What made these mills revolutionary wasn't just their concealment, but their resilience. Archaeologists studying the Janiculum site found evidence of continuous upgrades: wheels reinforced with iron bands, adjustable sluice gates to control flow, even emergency bypass channels to prevent flooding during heavy rains. The mills also served as a strategic reserve. When barbarian raids disrupted overland grain shipments, the Tiber's current kept the mills turning, buying precious time until relief arrived. A 4th century account describes how Prefect Symmachus secretly ordered the mill's output doubled during a siege, using hidden stockpiles to stretch Rome's supplies for months. The real genius lay in the mill's integration with other infrastructure. Flour could be funneled directly into adjacent underground bakeries via chutes, then transported through tunnels to distribution points near the Circus Maximus. Waste bran became fodder for stables above, creating a closed-loop system where nothing was wasted. Even the water's power was recycled after turning the mills. It rejoined the Cloaca Maxima to help flush sewage toward the river. This wasn't just engineering, it was ecosystem thinking on a scale unmatched until the modern era. Yet these technological wonders came at a human cost. Skeletal remains found near mill sites showed telltale spinal deformities from years spent hunched in damp chambers, while contemporary writers described the mill's roar as a sound that drove men mad. The poet Prudentius hauntingly compared the endless rotation of wheels to the fate of those trapped in Hades, a grim metaphor for the workers who spent their lives in that underworld of industry. Today, the best-preserved mill complex lies beneath Rome's Museo della Via Oscians, where the original brickwork still bears the scorch marks of torches that lit the perpetual night shift. Running a hand along those walls, you can feel the grooves worn by ropes hauling sacks of grain, the smoothed edges where generations of millers leaned to listen for the telltale creak of an overtaxed axle. These silent stones hold a lesson modern cities are still learning. True sustainability isn't about sprawling outward, but mastering the art of working within limits, even if it means building downward into the earth itself. Beneath the polished veneer of Rome's official supply chains thrived a shadow empire, a labyrinth of black markets operating in the city's forgotten tunnels and abandoned cellars. While senators boasted of orderly trade routes and regulated markets, these underground bazaars dealt in goods too dangerous or too precious for daylight. Picture a merchant in a dimly lit chamber beneath the Aventine Hill, unrolling a cloth to reveal stolen Egyptian amulets, their hieroglyphs still flecked with temple dust. Nearby, another vendor offers amphorae of unlicensed Falernian wine, the seals deliberately smudged to hide their origins. This wasn't just petty crime, it was a parallel economy feeding on Rome's insatiable appetites. The sheer variety of contraband would astonish even modern customs agents. Archaeologists have found hidden caches containing everything from untaxed silk smuggled through Parthian middlemen to lead curse tablets inscribed with the names of prominent politicians, proof that Rome's underworld dealt in supernatural vengeance as readily as material goods. One raid near the Circus Maximus uncovered a workshop forging Imperial coin dies, while beneath the upscale Subura district, a network of wine cellars doubled as distribution hubs for stolen temple offerings. These operations weren't random, they were highly organized, with lookouts posted near tunnel entrances and escape routes mapped through forgotten sections of the Cloaca Maxima. What made these markets so resilient was their symbiotic relationship with official logistics. The same tunnels that carried state grain could also hide sacks of untaxed spices. Bribed dockworkers at Ostia would mark certain shipments with innocuous scratches, signaling to underground buyers which crates to divert. Even the aqueducts played a role. Smugglers used maintenance shafts to lower small goods into the city, exploiting the fact that no guard would think to inspect flowing water. The poet Juvenal sarcastically noted that Rome's underworld merchants knew the city's infrastructure better than its own engineers, calling them the true masters of the arcades. Authorities fought back with increasingly creative tactics. The Vigiles, Rome's night watch, employed former smugglers as consultants to predict underground trade routes. Emperors like Claudius established a special customs force called the Portorium, whose agents used hollowed-out staffs to probe for hidden compartments in carts. But the most revealing countermeasure was architectural. New warehouses were built with raised floors to prevent tunneling, while sewer access points were redesigned with narrow grates to block the passage of large goods. Yet the black market's greatest legacy might be its role as an accidental preserver of forbidden cultures. When Rome banned the cult of Isis, devotees continued rituals in hidden chambers beneath the Esquiline Hill, their shrines decorated with smuggled artifacts from Alexandria. Later, early Christians adopted these same tactics, using underground networks to distribute texts and communion wine during persecutions. The very tunnels meant to sustain Rome's body became the veins keeping alternative beliefs alive. Today, traces of this shadow economy linger in unexpected places. The mortar of some underground chambers contains glittering flecks of mica, a telltale sign of repurposed stolen temple decorations. Near the old Emporium district, bricks bear faint countermarks from merchants tracking illicit shipments in code. These silent witnesses remind us that Rome's grandeur was always balanced on a knife's edge, its official splendor inseparable from the thriving darkness just beneath the surface. The catacombs of Rome stretch for hundreds of miles beneath the city's outskirts, their walls lined not just with bones, but with untold stories of resistance and community. Far from being mere cemeteries, these winding tunnels became secret gathering spaces where persecuted Christians could worship freely, their flickering oil lamps illuminating frescoes of biblical scenes painted boldly in defiance. But look closer. Hidden among the familiar images of Jonah and the whale or Daniel in the lion's den are symbols that served as coded messages. A simple anchor carved into the wall near an intersection wasn't just religious iconography. It pointed the way to an escape route leading to the Tiber's docks. What made these underground networks so effective was their organic growth. Unlike the engineered precision of aqueducts or sewers, the catacombs expanded haphazardly, following the contours of ancient quarries and natural caves. Early diggers, often enslaved laborers working at night, would hollow out new galleries following the softest tufa stone, creating a maze so complex that even experienced guides sometimes got lost. The catacomb of Domitilla, with its 4 levels descending nearly 70 feet, became a vertical city of the dead that could shelter hundreds of living souls during raids. Small side chambers held not just bodies but supplies, clay jars of grain, skins of water, even makeshift altars that could be dismantled at a moment's notice. The catacombs also reveal Rome's unexpected religious diversity. Beneath the Via Appia, Jewish catacombs with menorah carvings run parallel to Christian ones, their passages occasionally intersecting like underground neighborhoods. In the catacomb of Priscilla, a 3rd century fresco shows a woman breaking bread at what appears to be a Eucharistic meal, evidence that early Christian worship included female leadership long before it was erased from official history. These tunnels became time capsules preserving marginalized voices, their graffiti like inscriptions telling personal stories, a merchant thanking God for safe travels, a mother mourning her child, even a gladiator's plea for salvation. During the worst persecutions, the catacombs transformed into tactical assets. Secret staircases connected to nearby villas, allowing entire congregations to vanish mid-meeting if soldiers arrived. In the catacomb of San Callisto, a narrow shaft disguised as a well led to a network of tunnels emerging near a granary perfect for smuggling in food during long sieges. When Emperor Valerian ordered Christian meetings banned in 257, the faithful simply went deeper, holding baptisms in underground pools fed by natural springs and celebrating martyrs' anniversaries by torchlight. Yet the catacombs' greatest legacy might be how they redefined sacred space. Where Roman religion demanded grand temples and public sacrifices, Christianity thrived in humility, its most powerful rituals conducted in earthen chambers where the walls themselves seemed to whisper prayers. Walking these passages today, you can still see the niches where families would gather for funeral meals, the soot marks from candles that burned for generations, the tiny handprints of children who grew up knowing no other church but this. The catacombs weren't just refuges, they were living proof that faith could flourish even in darkness, and that sometimes the most enduring monuments are those hidden from the world's view. Roman engineers didn't just dig tunnels, they sculpted the earth with mathematical precision, turning unstable soil into enduring monuments. One of their most brilliant innovations was the systematic use of arches underground, long before Gothic cathedrals made them famous above ground. Walk through any surviving Roman tunnel, and you'll notice the ceiling isn't flat, it curves upward in that signature semicircular shape. This wasn't for aesthetics, it was physics in action. By distributing weight outward along the curve, arches could support unimaginable loads critical when you're tunneling beneath a city where a collapse might bring down a temple or palace. Pantheon's dome gets all the glory, but Rome's true architectural genius lies in the thousands of unseen arches holding up its underworld. Water was both Rome's lifeblood and its greatest underground adversary. Engineers countered this with a material so revolutionary we're still unraveling its secrets today: opus cementitium, their version of waterproof concrete. Unlike modern concrete that erodes in seawater, Roman mixtures used volcanic ash from Pozzuoli, creating a chemical reaction that actually strengthens over time. Dive into the submerged tunnels beneath Ostia's harbor, and you'll find walls still intact after 2,000 years of saltwater battering, but their hydraulic genius didn't stop there. In the Cloaca Maxima, sluice gates controlled flow direction, while sedimentation basins along aqueducts filtered debris, an ancient version of modern water treatment plants. Ventilation posed another deadly challenge. Without it, tunnel workers suffocated from lamp smoke or invisible pockets of damp air, what we now know as carbon dioxide. Roman solutions were eerily prescient. Vertical shafts disguised as wells brought fresh air to deep tunnels, while some passages had angled floors creating natural convection currents. Beneath the baths of Caracalla, archaeologists found bronze vents positioned to exploit seasonal winds, proving these engineers understood fluid dynamics intuitively. Their surveying techniques border on sorcery. Using simple tools like the groma and corabates, teams could align tunnels digging from opposite ends to meet within inches. No GPS, no lasers. The Aqua Claudia's 30-mile course deviates less than 1 degree from its planned path. How? They likely used fire signals at night to maintain alignment across hills and valleys. Modern engineers replicating these feats with laser levels still marvel at their accuracy. The ultimate testament to their skill lies in what didn't happen. Unlike medieval cities plagued by catastrophic tunnel collapses, Rome's underground endured earthquakes, floods, and centuries of neglect. When modern subway builders hit Roman tunnels beneath Barcelona, they found them structurally sound enough to incorporate into the new system. That's the silent legacy of Rome's engineers, not just what they built, but how they thought. Their notebooks may be lost to time, but their ideas still shape the skylines and subterranean worlds we inhabit today. The ashes of Rome's Great Fire in 64 didn't just reveal charred ruins, they exposed a fatal flaw in the city's design. With no reliable way to fight flames beyond bucket brigades and desperate demolition, entire neighborhoods had burned like kindling. But from this catastrophe emerged one of antiquity's most ingenious urban adaptations, a hidden firefighting network woven into the city's underbelly. Picture teams of vigiles, Rome's leather-clad firefighters racing not toward the flames, but beneath them, descending into a labyrinth of access shafts that put water directly where it was needed most. At the heart of this system were hundreds of underground cisterns, strategically placed beneath at-risk districts. Unlike the grand aqueducts feeding public fountains, these reservoirs held water under pressure, connected to lead pipes that could be tapped at critical junctions. Archaeologists have found these chambers lined with opus signinum, a waterproof mortar mixed with crushed pottery that kept water fresh for emergencies. But the real innovation was their placement. By studying wind patterns and common fire paths, engineers positioned cisterns near bakeries, oil warehouses, and dense tenements where blazes often started. A single reservoir beneath the Subura district could flood an entire street within minutes through strategically placed outlet pipes. The vigiles themselves became masters of subterranean warfare. Equipped with axes, hooks, and leather pumps, they trained to navigate tunnels marked with color-coded symbols: red for direct water access, black for escape routes. During drills, teams competed to connect leather hoses to underground outlets faster than rivals could climb stairs with buckets, their most effective weapon. The sipho, a bronze pump that could draw water directly from cisterns and blast it through nozzles with surprising force. Modern tests show these devices could project a stream over 80 feet, enough to reach third-story windows. What made this system revolutionary wasn't just its technology, but its integration with daily life. Water outlets were disguised as decorative fountains or public drinking troughs, ensuring infrastructure didn't disrupt the city's aesthetics. Wealthy homeowners paid premiums to have private cistern links installed, while entire insulae apartment blocks pooled resources to fund neighborhood reservoirs. The system even influenced architecture. New buildings incorporated fire breaks and non-flammable volcanic stone after the fire, but also access panels allowing vigiles to reach hidden pipes without damaging walls. The legacy of Rome's fire network lingers in surprising ways. When Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii, archaeologists found similar cistern systems already in use, proof the idea had spread across the empire. Centuries later, Byzantine engineers adapted the concept for Constantinople's Great Palace, creating pressurized reservoirs that could douse flames even during sieges. Today, walking Rome's streets, you might spot innocuous iron grates marked with ancient symbols, quiet testaments to an era when survival depended not just on fighting fires, but on outthinking them from below. Rome's emperors may have lived in gilded palaces, but their most ingenious constructions weren't the marble halls or golden statues. They were the hidden escape routes spiderwebbing beneath their feet. Take Nero's Domus Aurea, where architects built a private tunnel disguised as a servant's corridor, its walls thick enough to muffle the clatter of fleeing footsteps. This wasn't just an exit strategy, it was a carefully engineered psychological weapon. By vanishing mid-crisis through secret panels, emperors could fuel rumors of divine disappearance, only to reappear dramatically with loyal praetorians at their back. The engineering behind these passages reveals their true purpose. Unlike utilitarian sewer tunnels, Imperial escape routes featured subtle design choices: slightly sloping floors to allow faster movement in darkness, niches for torches that wouldn't smoke out runners, even false branches ending in deadfalls for pursuers. Caligula had one built with alternating step heights, a disorienting trick to slow followers unfamiliar with the pattern. Beneath Hadrian's villa at Tivoli, archaeologists found a tunnel with a unique acoustic property. Whispers spoken near its entrance could be heard clearly 50 feet down, allowing advance warning of approaching threats. Some escape systems reached staggering scales. Domitian's network connected the Palatine to 3 separate river docks via underground walkways wide enough for a litter to pass. When unrest flared, he could theoretically reach a waiting ship without ever emerging into daylight. More paranoid still was Commodus, who commissioned a private gladiator barracks beneath the Colosseum, complete with a direct tunnel to the Imperial box. This wasn't just about escape, it was about maintaining the ability to summon deadly force even during public performances. The survival of these routes depended on absolute secrecy. Workers were reportedly recruited from distant provinces to prevent local knowledge, then allegedly executed after construction, though historians debate whether this was truth or dark legend. What's certain is the lengths taken to obscure entrances. At the Villa of the Quintilii, excavators found a passage hidden behind a hydraulic contraption, turn a decorative fountain just so, and a section of wall would swing open on counterbalanced hinges. Yet these tunnels also became symbols of imperial fragility. The very fact they existed spoke volumes about the constant fear poisoning Rome's leadership. When Praetorian guards finally cornered Emperor Elagabalus in 222, his last desperate act was to flee toward a secret passage, only to find it mysteriously blocked. The message was clear: no tunnel could save an emperor who'd lost the loyalty of those who built them. Today, running a hand along the cool stone of these abandoned escape routes, you can almost feel the ghostly panic of those who once fled through them, the hurried breaths, the sweat-slick palms brushing walls for guidance. They stand as silent witnesses to a fundamental truth about power. Those who rule from golden heights often dig their deepest foundations in fear. Beneath Rome's bustling streets, where aqueducts and sewers carried the practical necessities of life, another kind of network thrived, one devoted to the mysteries of the divine. In candlelit chambers carved deep into the earth, initiates of secretive cults like Mithraism underwent rituals that transformed the physical underground into a spiritual underworld. These weren't just meeting places, they were sacred theaters where darkness itself became part of the worship. Picture a young soldier descending a narrow staircase into a Mithraeum, his footsteps echoing as he left the world of sunlight behind. The air grows cooler, the shadows deeper, until he enters a vaulted room where frescoes of the god Mithras slaying a cosmic bull shimmer in the flickering light. This was more than theater, it was a journey into the symbolic heart of existence. The design of these spaces reveals their purpose. Unlike the grand public temples above ground, Mithraea were intimate, often accommodating no more than 30 worshippers. Their ceilings were painted midnight blue with scattered stars, mimicking the celestial realm. The central aisle always aligned north to south, mirroring the path of the sun, a deliberate nod to Mithras's role as a solar deity. At the far end stood an altar depicting the Tauroctony, the god's sacred bull-slaying act, flanked by torchbearers representing dawn and dusk. Every architectural choice carried meaning. The low ceilings forced initiates to bow, the uneven floors reminded them of life's struggles, and the absence of natural light heightened the drama of revelation when torches suddenly illuminated hidden symbols. What made these cults so compelling was their experiential nature. Initiates didn't just hear about Mithras, they reenacted his trials. Graffiti in the Mithraeum under San Clement Basilica hints at staged ordeals, blindfolded passages meant to simulate the soul's journey, mock battles echoing the god's cosmic struggle, even ritual meals where worshippers shared bread and wine as Mithras had done with the sun god Sol. Climax came when an initiate, after years of progression through 7 grades like Raven or Lion, finally witnessed the Tauroctony scene unveiled in a burst of light, a moment designed to trigger transcendent awe. But Mithraism was just one thread in Rome's underground spiritual tapestry. Beneath the Aventine Hill, the Temple of Cybele hosted ecstatic rites where initiates bathed in the blood of sacrificed bulls. Nearby, followers of Isis gathered in crypt-like chapels to mourn Osiris's death and celebrate his resurrection, their chants muffled by thick walls to avoid persecution. Even early Christians adapted catacomb chambers for baptisms, using natural springs to create subterranean pools where converts emerged dripping, reborn into a faith that Rome sought to suppress. The artwork in these spaces tells a story of cross-cultural borrowing. A Mithraeum in Ostia features a mosaic of the zodiac alongside Persian symbols, while a Cybele shrine incorporates Egyptian motifs. This blending reflects Rome's empire-wide trade in ideas. Soldiers stationed on the Danube brought back Thracian rituals, merchants from Syria introduced Eastern mysticism, and enslaved intellectuals preserved forbidden philosophies. The underground became a sanctuary not just for people, but for beliefs that couldn't survive in the sunlight of Roman orthodoxy. What's most striking is how these cults inverted Rome's values. In a society obsessed with public honor and visible power, secrecy became sacred. Where official religion celebrated the state, mystery cults offered personal salvation. And while imperial temples soared upward toward the heavens, the most profound spiritual experiences happened beneath the earth, a reminder that sometimes to reach the divine, you must first descend into the dark. Today, crouching in the remains of a Mithraeum, you can still see the faint outlines of painted stars on the ceiling, the worn spots where generations of initiates knelt. These marks aren't just archaeological details, they're echoes of a time when Rome's underworld wasn't just about survival or logistics, but about the human longing to touch something beyond the visible world. The stones may be silent now, but if you listen closely, they still whisper of torchlight and chants, of souls seeking meaning in the hidden places beneath an empire's feet. The patrician families of Rome didn't just build villas, they constructed entire shadow cities beneath their feet. While ordinary citizens jostled through crowded streets, the elite glided unseen through private tunnels lined with imported marble, their footsteps muffled by intricate mosaic floors. These weren't mere shortcuts, they were statements of power, physical manifestations of the social chasm between Rome's rulers and the masses. Take the recently uncovered passage beneath the Villa of the Quintilii on the Appian Way, a subterranean gallery wide enough for 2 litters to pass comfortably. Its walls adorned with frescoes of mythological scenes so vivid they seemed to move in the flicker of torchlight. What made these tunnels extraordinary wasn't just their luxury, but their strategic purpose. A senator could leave his home near the Palatine, descend into a private stairwell, and emerge directly into his reserved seat at the Theatre of Pompey without once brushing shoulders with the plebeians in the upper tiers. The House of the Vestals connected to the Temple of Vesta via a tunnel with a clever optical illusion. Its slightly curved path made the distance seem shorter, a psychological trick to ease the priestess's frequent journeys. Even the baths became exclusive when accessed through these passages. The wealthy bypassed the public entrances entirely, emerging instead into private heated chambers where enslaved attendants waited with scented oils. The engineering behind these corridors reveals a darker ingenuity. Some featured whispering walls, specially angled surfaces that carried voices over long distances, allowing patrons to summon guards or send warnings. Others had hidden alcoves with pulley systems to lower baskets of food or gifts from the surface, eliminating the need for visible deliveries that might attract thieves. The most opulent tunnels incorporated hydraulic lifts, like the one Calpurnia Piso installed beneath her estate to transport guests between levels without exertion. These weren't conveniences, they were calculated displays of technological mastery meant to awe visitors. Yet these tunnels also bred paranoia. After the conspiracy of Piso against Nero, patricians began installing trapdoors and false walls. One unearthed near the Circus Maximus contained a compartment with rusty manacles, suggesting some passages served as private prisons. The poet Juvenal mocked the elite's obsession with hidden routes, writing that Rome's richest men knew the underworld better than the rats. Today, fragments of this shadow network survive in unexpected places. Beneath a modern apartment building near the Campo de Fiori, archaeologists found a tunnel with a mosaic border depicting a snarling Molossian hound, likely the ancient equivalent of a "Beware of Dog" sign. Nearby, a section of the Domus Aurea's private access route still shows grooves where a rolling mechanism once carried Nero's litter uphill without tilting. These ruins whisper a truth Rome's elite understood well. Real power isn't just about what you show the world, but what you hide beneath it. Mapping Rome's hidden underworld isn't like solving a puzzle with all the pieces. It's more like assembling a jigsaw where most fragments are still buried. Modern archaeologists don't just dig blindly. They wield tools that would make even Roman engineers envious. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses through the earth, revealing hollow chambers and tunnels as ghostly outlines on screens, while laser scanners create millimeter-perfect 3D models of every groove in ancient brickwork. But the real breakthroughs happen when technology meets history. A single line in Vitruvius's writings about conduits beneath the circus led researchers to a forgotten aqueduct branch near the Piazza Venezia, its course still traceable by the slight dip in modern pavement above it. Every discovery tells a layered story. When workers renovating a bakery near the Pantheon stumbled upon a blocked-off passage in 2012, they assumed it was a medieval cellar until archaeologists noticed the telltale herringbone pattern of 1st century brickwork. Further exploration revealed a tunnel stretching toward the Tiber, its walls scored by cartwheels and its ceiling blackened by centuries of torch smoke. This wasn't just another sewer, it was a missing link in Rome's underground freight network, connecting newly mapped routes beneath the Campus Martius to the river docks. Such finds aren't isolated. LiDAR scans of the Janiculum Hill recently exposed an entire buried neighborhood of subterranean mills, their water channels still aligned with long-vanished tributaries of the Tiber. The real detective work begins when physical evidence collides with ancient records. A fragmentary inscription praising Emperor Claudius for freeing the city from grain delays took on new meaning when paired with sonar scans showing a vast distribution hub beneath Ostia's port. Cross-referencing customs receipts on wax tablets revealed how this hub fed into the tunnel system, allowing shipments to bypass Rome's chaotic markets entirely. Even mistakes yield insights. A misaligned sewer pipe installed in the 1950s accidentally preserved a section of the Cloaca Maxima's original vaulting, providing the first clear evidence of its Republican-era construction techniques. Perhaps the most thrilling tools are the ones that let us see through time. Photogrammetry software can reconstruct collapsed tunnels from nothing but rubble patterns, while chemical analysis of mortar samples traces their origins to specific quarries and eras. In the catacombs of Domitilla, multispectral imaging recently uncovered faded frescoes beneath layers of soot, revealing hidden baptismal rites. But for all our technology, some secrets still rely on old-fashioned intuition. One researcher spent years following a hunch about a discrepancy in Renaissance maps, a hunch that led to the rediscovery of Nero's Cryptobalbi, a theater passageway repurposed as a medieval garbage chute, then lost for 500 years. What emerges from these fragments is a radical new understanding of Rome's genius. It wasn't just the scale of their infrastructure that astonishes, it's the adaptability. Tunnels were widened, repurposed, or abandoned as needs changed, with each modification leaving clues in the archaeological record. A single shaft near the Colosseum shows 3 distinct phases, first as a grain chute, then as a Christian escape route, finally as a medieval tannery's waste disposal. The real lesson of these discoveries isn't about ancient engineering marvels. It's about how cities evolve, layer upon layer, with each generation leaving its mark on the bones of the last. Long before Roman engineers reshaped the underworld with their aqueducts and tunnels, the city's earliest inhabitants discovered an ally in the very earth beneath their feet: natural caves. These hollowed-out spaces, carved by water and time, became Rome's first hidden chambers, offering shelter from storms, security from raiders, and sanctuaries for rituals older than the city itself. Picture the Palatine Hill before it was crowned with palaces. when shepherds drove flocks into its grottos to escape the summer heat, their lanterns casting flickering shadows on walls that still bore the tooth marks of prehistoric wolves. These caves weren't just voids in the rock, they were the blueprint for Rome's subterranean ambition. As the city expanded, these natural spaces were absorbed into its growing infrastructure with ingenious pragmatism. The Lupercal, a sacred cave at the foot of the Palatine, long associated with the she-wolf who nursed Romulus and Remus, was transformed into a shrine where rituals blended local legend with imperial propaganda. Nearby, the Caves of the Seven Sleepers, a network of tufa chambers, became storage for olive oil and grain, their cool, stable temperatures preserving goods far better than above-ground warehouses. But the real innovation came when engineers began modifying these spaces, widening passages to accommodate carts, carving staircases into soft volcanic rock, and even diverting natural springs to create underground cisterns. The boundary between what nature provided and what humans engineered blurred until the two became inseparable. Some of Rome's most pivotal moments unfolded in these hybrid spaces. Beneath the Capitoline Hill, the Tullianum, a dank, naturally formed pit, was repurposed as a prison where enemies of the state met grim fates, its walls still bearing the grooves where chains once scraped against stone. When Jugurtha, the rebellious Numidian king, was lowered into its depths in 104 before the Common Era, his final sight wasn't man-made grandeur but the dripping limestone ceiling of a cave that had existed since the Ice Age. Yet even here, Roman ingenuity left its mark. Engineers later added a drain to flush away blood and waste, turning a primal hollow into a deliberate instrument of justice. Religious practices thrived in these liminal spaces where earth met architecture. The Cave of the Nymphs near the Tiber became a center for water worship, its walls adorned with seashell mosaics that shimmered in the light of oil lamps. Followers of Cybele, the Great Mother, held ecstatic rites in a grotto beneath the Vatican Hill, the echoes of drums and flutes amplifying off natural acoustics no human builder could replicate. Most hauntingly, the underground chambers of the Collegium of the Arval brothers, a priesthood tasked with ensuring agricultural fertility, preserved centuries of inscriptions detailing rituals performed in caves so ancient, even the Romans considered them timeless. The true testament to these spaces' importance lies in their endurance. When Gothic invaders sacked Rome in 410, it was to the natural caves along the Appian Way that citizens fled, sheltering in the same hollows their ancestors had used a millennium earlier. Centuries later, medieval Christians would repurpose these very grottos as chapels, their frescoes of saints painted over pagan symbols in layers of devotion. Today, walking the path of the ancient Via Tiburtina, you can still find entrances to these caves, some now sealed with iron gates, others open as wine cellars or storerooms. They whisper a truth modern cities forget. Sometimes the strongest foundations aren't built but born. Every morning in ancient Rome, before the first bread was baked or the first speech delivered in the forum, the city's hidden veins were already at work. Water gurgled through lead pipes beneath wealthy homes, filling private fountains and bathing pools, while public cisterns in poorer neighborhoods filled to the brim, all thanks to aqueducts that had been flowing silently through the night. This wasn't magic, it was logistics perfected over centuries. The average Roman might never see the labyrinth of tunnels sustaining their city, but they felt its presence in every sip of clean water, every loaf of bread, every trip to the baths that didn't end in disease. Take something as simple as buying olive oil. The merchant in the market didn't just haul amphorae through crowded streets. He sourced them from underground warehouses near the Tiber, where tunnels allowed ships to offload directly into storage. Those same corridors kept the oil at a constant cool temperature, preventing spoilage. Even the shop itself might have a trapdoor leading to a subterranean storeroom, letting the owner restock without closing up. For wealthier patrons, delivery services used the freight tunnels to bring goods straight to their homes' basement entrances, avoiding the grime and thieves of the streets above. What looked like ordinary commerce was actually the endpoint of a vast, invisible supply chain. Then there was waste removal, a chore transformed by engineering. While medieval cities would drown in filth for centuries, Romans simply flushed their refuse into the Cloaca Maxima's tributaries. Tavern kitchens had sluice channels that whisked away scraps, and even public latrines, often built over sewer lines, offered running water to clean sponges on sticks. The system wasn't perfect. Slaves still emptied chamber pots in poorer areas, but compared to contemporaries, Romans lived in startling cleanliness. Even commuting was shaped by the underworld. Wealthy senators avoided the jostling crowds by using Cryptoporticus passages to reach the Senate House, while bakers moved flour through tunnels connecting mills to ovens. At night, when carts were banned from surface streets for noise, freight continued moving underground, ensuring markets were stocked by dawn, the true measure of these networks' success. Most Romans rarely thought about them. Like modern city dwellers who flip a switch without considering power grids, they turned a faucet or visited a bathhouse without marveling at the engineering beneath their feet. Yet when the systems failed, as during the Gothic siege of 537, when attackers cut the aqueducts, chaos erupted within days, streets piled with garbage, fountains ran dry, and disease spread. The hidden networks weren't just conveniences. They were the thin line between civilization and collapse, quietly proving that Rome's greatness wasn't just in its marble facades, but in the unseen machinery that kept them standing. The bustling markets of Rome might have dazzled with their colorful stalls and shouting vendors, but the real action happened beneath the cobblestones, where merchants orchestrated an underground ballet of goods moving in near-total secrecy. Take the wine trade. While average citizens bought from street vendors, elite dealers stored their prized Falernian vintages in temperature-controlled cellars beneath the Aventine Hill, where volcanic tufa rock kept barrels at a perfect coolness year-round. These weren't just storage spaces, they were clandestine distribution hubs. Workers rolled amphorae through tunnels that connected directly to riverside docks, allowing shipments to bypass the crowded Emporium district entirely. One recently uncovered cellar near the Tiber still bears chalk marks on its walls, a coded system tracking which batches were destined for senators' tables and which were adjusted with honey or spices to mask souring, all while avoiding the watchful eyes of tax collectors. Olive oil moved through even more elaborate subterranean networks, beneath the Monte Testaccio, where millions of broken oil amphorae now form an artificial hill. Archaeologists found evidence of a sprawling underground portico. Merchants here used gravity-fed channels to funnel oil from arriving ships into hidden cisterns, skimming off portions before official measurements were taken. The dregs weren't wasted. They flowed into secondary tunnels leading to soap makers' workshops, creating a shadow economy of byproducts. Some daring traders even constructed private canals branching off the Tiber, their existence known only through cryptic references in lawsuits accusing rivals of diverting the river's bounty. Spice dealers took secrecy further still. A labyrinth beneath the Via Sacra contained tiny, climate-controlled chambers where saffron from Cilicia and pepper from India were stored in lead-lined jars to preserve potency. The real shock came when researchers analyzed mortar samples and found traces of myrrh and cinnamon not from spilled goods, but deliberately mixed into the building materials. This wasn't accidental. The fragrances masked the tunnel's locations from inspectors' noses during raids. Merchants also employed scent decoys, burning common herbs like rosemary at street-level entrances to overwhelm any telltale aromas wafting up from below. The boldest schemes involved entire counterfeit supply chains. In Austria, a tunnel complex was discovered with its own underground dock, complete with a hydraulic lift system to raise goods from boats to warehouses without surfacing. Wax tablets found on-site revealed how merchants used this hidden port to relabel cheap Spanish olive oil as premium Libyan, a scam that might have gone unnoticed if not for a disgruntled enslaved worker's graffiti detailing the operation. Nearby, another tunnel contained stacks of forged customs seals, suggesting some traders moved goods entirely through subterranean routes, avoiding official ports altogether. Yet these networks weren't just about deception, they were logistical masterpieces. During the Great Fire of '64, when surface warehouses burned, underground cellars saved enough grain to prevent famine. In winter, when icy roads stalled overland caravans, tunnels kept trade flowing. The real irony, many of these secret passages were an open secret among officials, who turned a blind eye in exchange for bribes or first pick of exotic goods. Rome's underworld didn't undermine the system, it was the system, proving that even in antiquity, commerce and cunning were inseparable partners. When the Western Empire crumbled in the 5th century, Rome's subterranean marvels didn't vanish, they slipped into shadows. As aqueducts cracked and tunnels flooded, medieval citizens saw opportunity in the ruins. The very stones that once channeled water now became building blocks for churches and fortresses. Workers pried apart perfectly cut travertine blocks from abandoned cisterns, leaving behind skeletal frameworks of arches. The Circus Maximus's underground passages, once bustling with deliveries, became makeshift quarries where families chiseled out bricks to patch their homes. Even the mighty Cloaca Maxima, though still partially functional, was stripped of its decorative marble veneers repurposed for altars in the new Christian basilicas rising above. By the Renaissance, Rome's underworld had transformed from infrastructure to curiosity. Scholars like Bion do Flavio descended into the darkness with torches and measuring ropes, sketching vaulted passages in notebooks filled with awestruck marginalia. They marveled at how brickwork survived centuries of neglect, while above ground, their own constructions already showed cracks. Artists like Piranesi later immortalized these spaces in dramatic etchings, exaggerating their scale to heighten the sublime terror of these undiscovered ruins. But the real turning point came in the 18th century, when Pope Clement Roman XI commissioned the first systematic survey of the aqueducts, not for restoration, but out of sheer historical fascination. For the first time, Rome's subterranean past was valued not for utility, but for its story. Modern archaeology has peeled back even deeper layers. In the 1920s, Mussolini's demolition crews uncovered entire neighborhoods of buried warehouses near the Tiber, accidentally revealing how grain distribution tunnels dovetailed with river trade. More recently, thermal imaging in the catacombs of Domitilla exposed previously unknown frescoes hidden beneath soot, their colors still vibrant after 16 centuries. But perhaps the most poignant rediscovery came in 2016, when spelunkers mapping a forgotten branch of the Aqua Claudia found a worker's toolkit wedged between stones, a rusted pick, a bronze level, and a small oil lamp still blackened from its final use. These weren't just artifacts, they were intimate snapshots of the invisible labor that sustained an empire. Yet for all we've uncovered, mysteries persist. Ground-penetrating radar near the baths of Caracalla reveals voids that match no known plans, while sonar scans of the Tiber's banks suggest submerged tunnels leading to unexcavated Imperial storerooms. Even tourist hotspots like the Domus Aurea's underground galleries yield new surprises. Recent laser scans detected hidden chambers behind false walls, their purpose still unknown. The greatest revelation might still lie ahead. Estimates suggest less than 40% of Rome's subterranean network has been properly documented. Every repaired sewer pipe or subway expansion risks cutting through undiscovered history, a reminder that the eternal city's deepest secrets are still waiting beneath our footsteps. Modern Rome walks a tightrope between past and present every time a construction crew breaks ground. Just last year, workers digging a new metro line near the Colosseum suddenly hit a void, not a natural cavity, but a perfectly preserved stretch of an Imperial-era road, complete with ruts worn by centuries of cartwheels. The discovery brought the billion-euro project to a screeching halt as archaeologists scrambled to document the find. This scenario plays out constantly in a city where every shovel of dirt might reveal an ancient warehouse, a forgotten crypt, or even an entire underground villa. The dilemma is stark: delay vital infrastructure to preserve history, or pave over irreplaceable artifacts to keep Rome functioning in the 21st century. The challenges multiply when these discoveries involve still functioning systems. Beneath Piazza Venezia, modern plumbing shares space with original lead pipes from the Aqua Virgo aqueduct, now 2,000 years old but still supplying water to Trevi Fountain. When leaks occur, repair teams navigate a surreal landscape where PVC joints meet Roman concrete, requiring specialists versed in both ancient and modern engineering. Even Rome's celebrated subway system, the Metropolitana, tells a story of compromise. Station walls proudly display excavated artifacts behind glass, turning commute routes into impromptu museums, while trains themselves detour around sensitive archaeological zones mapped by ground-penetrating radar. Yet for every careful preservation effort, there's the shadowy threat of the Tombaroli treasure hunters who have turned illicit excavation into a high-stakes black market industry. Armed with old maps and makeshift tools, these modern-day looters slip into forgotten tunnels under cover of darkness, prizing mosaics from walls and sifting dirt for coins or jewelry. The damage isn't just about stolen artifacts. Their haphazard digging collapses delicate underground structures and destroys contextual clues vital to understanding finds. A police raid in 2019 uncovered a suburban garage converted into a clandestine restoration lab, where stolen fresco fragments were being chemically treated to fetch higher prices from collectors. Legal battles rage over how to protect this buried heritage. Strict Italian laws mandate archaeological supervision for any digging below 3 meters, but enforcement is patchy. Meanwhile, homeowners face Kafkaesque scenarios. One family near the Appian Way spent years battling bureaucracy after their cellar renovation revealed a 2nd-century nymphaeum, leaving them responsible for securing a now priceless historical site beneath their living room. Some argue for a radical approach, using 3D scanning to digitally preserve vulnerable sites before sealing them forever, allowing progress while keeping a record of what lies below. Beneath these conflicts lies a profound philosophical question: is subterranean Rome a museum to be preserved intact, or a living city that must evolve? The answer may lie in the innovative compromises emerging across the city. At the Basilica of San Clement, visitors descend through layers of history, a 12th-century church atop a 4th-century sanctuary, which in turn sits over a 1st-century mithraeum, all carefully excavated yet still structurally supporting the active church above. Perhaps Rome's future isn't choosing between past and present, but continuing its ancient tradition of building layer upon layer, each era leaving its mark for the next to discover. Rome's underground networks weren't just engineering triumphs. They were masterclasses in urban planning that still hold startling relevance today. Take scalability. The aqueducts didn't just meet Rome's immediate water needs, they were designed with expansion in mind. Engineers left intentional gaps in their arcades where future branches could be added, anticipating growth we'd now call future-proofing. When the city's population exploded from 200,000 to over 1 million, the system scaled effortlessly, feeding new fountains and baths without costly overhauls. Modern cities wrestling with outdated infrastructure could learn from this long game thinking, like how Barcelona recently repurposed Roman-era cisterns to supplement its water supply during droughts, blending ancient capacity with modern demand. Redundancy was another Roman specialty. Their aqueducts didn't rely on a single source. 11 separate lines fed the city from different directions. If one failed, whether from earthquake, sabotage, or silt buildup, others could compensate. This mirrored approach echoes in today's most resilient systems, like Tokyo's underground floodwater tunnels or Oslo's dual subway lines designed to stay operational even during emergencies. But Rome took it further by integrating cross-functional backups. The same tunnels that carried grain shipments could, in crisis, be repurposed to transport troops or emergency water stores, a flexibility seen in modern, blue-green infrastructure where parks double as flood basins or solar farms power transit hubs. The real genius lay in multi-use planning. Roman tunnels weren't monofunctional corridors, they were layered ecosystems. A single passage beneath the Aventine might simultaneously channel freshwater pipes, house ventilation shafts for underground warehouses, and concealed communication conduits for the military. This spatial efficiency puts many modern cities to shame, where today we bury power lines, sewers, and fiber optics in separate trenches. Rome stacked utilities like a subterranean lasagna. Amsterdam's recent multi-utility corridors, which combine heating pipes and broadband cables in shared tunnels, directly mirror this ancient approach. Even Rome's famed Cloaca Maxima served triple duty: drainage, waste removal, and as a hidden transport route during floods. Perhaps the most transferable lesson is adaptive reuse. When Rome's population declined in late antiquity, its citizens didn't abandon the underground, they reimagined it. Grain tunnels became mushroom farms, aqueduct channels powered medieval mills, and the catacombs found new life as pilgrimage sites. This legacy inspires contemporary projects like Paris's Promenade Plantée, where a disused viaduct became an elevated park, or Seattle's repurposing of old transit tunnels for light rail. The through line is clear. Great infrastructure isn't just about building for the present, but creating frameworks flexible enough to evolve across centuries. As climate change and urbanization strain our cities, Rome's example challenges us to think deeper, literally. Its networks thrived not through brute force technology, but by harmonizing with natural systems. Aqueducts followed gravity's logic, sewers harnessed river currents, and warehouses exploited geothermal stability. Modern engineers are rediscovering this wisdom in projects like Singapore's deep tunnel sewer system, which mimics Roman sedimentation tanks, or Copenhagen's climate-resilient streets designed to handle stormwater like the Cloaca Maxima once did. The Eternal City's greatest gift isn't its specific solutions, but its mindset, that the best urban innovations often lie just beneath our feet, waiting to be uncovered or reinvented. Hollywood would have you believe Rome's underground was a booby-trapped labyrinth filled with lost treasures and daring escapes, but the truth is far more interesting. While movies love showing secret tunnels used by emperors to vanish in a crisis, most of Rome's subterranean networks were as ordinary as a modern subway system. Take the Cryptoporticus beneath Nero's palace. Yes, it was hidden, but it wasn't some mysterious passageway. It was a practical solution to avoid crowds and bad weather. the ancient equivalent of a VIP corridor in a concert venue. Another myth that these tunnels were built in secrecy. In reality, construction crews worked in plain sight. The Cloaca Maxima's massive arches weren't concealed. They were celebrated as public works, with commemorative coins minted to honor their completion. Even the famed catacombs weren't deliberately hidden. Early Christians buried their dead there because land above ground was expensive, not to stage covert meetings. The real intrigue lies in how these spaces evolved. A tunnel might start as a grain chute, later become a smuggler's route during a famine, and end up as a medieval wine cellar. Function changed with necessity, leaving layers of history in the brickwork. Then there's the exaggerated idea of underground traps. While a few Imperial escape routes had tricks like disorienting steps or false walls, most tunnels were straightforward. The real danger wasn't hidden spikes, it was poor maintenance. Collapses from shoddy repairs or flooding claimed far more lives than any Hollywood-style death trap. Even the fabled Mithria, those shadowy cult chambers, were less about secret rituals and more about controlled atmospheres. Their dim lighting and cave-like acoustics were carefully designed to enhance spiritual experiences, not conceal them. Perhaps the biggest misconception is that Rome's underworld was a single, unified system. In truth, it was a patchwork of projects built over centuries, often with no master plan. Aqueduct engineers didn't coordinate with sewer teams, leading to comical overlaps like the time workers accidentally connected a freshwater pipe to a latrine drain, causing a neighborhood's drinking supply to taste suspiciously foul. Yet this chaos birthed innovation. When mismatched tunnels intersected, resourceful Romans repurposed them, turning a misaligned grain chute into a ventilation shaft or a dead-end passage into a clandestine shrine. The real treasure of Rome's underground isn't gold or lost artifacts, it's the ingenuity etched into every brick, those cart ruts worn into tunnel floors. They tell of countless deliveries that kept the city fed, the soot marks on ceilings, evidence of lamps that lit the work of engineers, merchants, and laborers who literally upheld an empire. Next time you see a movie where heroes dodge spinning blades in ancient tunnels, remember the quieter truth. Rome's greatest underground feats weren't about secrets, but survival, the unglamorous, extraordinary work of keeping a metropolis alive beneath the feet of history. Rome's hidden networks weren't just feats of engineering, they were the silent pulse of an empire, the unseen force that turned a city of stone into a living, breathing organism. Think about it, while gladiators fought in the Colosseum and senators debated in the Forum, these underground arteries were quietly doing the work that made it all possible. Fresh water flowed without pumps, grain moved without clogging the streets, and waste vanished without a trace. This wasn't just convenience, it was civilization operating at a scale the world had never seen. And the most remarkable part, much of it still functions today, a testament to the vision of engineers who built not just for their own time, but for millennia. What made these systems extraordinary wasn't just their complexity, but their adaptability. When Rome's population exploded, the tunnels expanded. When enemies threatened, passageways became lifelines. Even in decline, they found new purpose. Medieval farmers repurposed aqueduct channels to power mills, and Renaissance scholars studied sewer brickwork to unlock lost construction techniques. This flexibility holds a powerful lesson for our modern cities, where crumbling infrastructure often struggles to meet new challenges. Imagine if today's subway tunnels could one day channel water, or if fiber optic cables shared ducts with future energy systems. Rome's builders understood that true resilience means designing spaces that can evolve. Yet for all we've uncovered, the underground still guards its secrets. Less than half of Rome's subterranean network has been fully mapped, and every year new discoveries rewrite history. A recently unearthed tunnel near the Circus Maximus revealed a stash of first-century shipping manifests, ordinary paperwork that somehow survived centuries of floods and earthquakes. These fragile wax tablets now tell us more about ancient trade routes than any grand monument ever could. It's a reminder that history isn't always found in treasure chests or gold artifacts. Sometimes it's hidden in the grooves of a cart track or the soot stains of a forgotten lamp. As we wrap up this journey beneath Rome's streets, consider how much of our own cities remain invisible. Beneath the asphalt and skyscrapers, there are layers of pipes, wires, and tunnels, the modern equivalents of aqueducts and cryptoportici. Will future archaeologists marvel at our subways the way we marvel at the Cloaca Maxima? The next time you turn on a faucet or ride an elevator, remember, civilization has always depended on the hidden systems we rarely see. If you've enjoyed uncovering these ancient mysteries with us, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's untold stories. And drop a comment below. What modern infrastructure do you think will astonish people 2,000 years from now? Until next time, keep looking beyond the surface. The past and the future are closer than you think.